day, August 26th, 2024. And I just decided to come in this morning halfway through my solitary retreat, but then there's been some work things that have been needing my attention during my retreat, so I found myself some reflections around work and retreat. Just at the beginning of my retreat, the computers went down, the internet went down, so having to work with Neil on that, and then some other kind of bureaucratic things that came up that needed my attention. And so I found there was a bit of frustration. I should be on retreat, should be able to be fully on retreat. But then the reflection came up. It was about work in general and just how to relate to the duties, especially when we're in the monastery, that there is this energy of always wanting to get things done. But if we really reflect on things, actually it's never done. The work is never done. So it's like when Venerable Anuruddha was, all the other Sakyans were going to ordain and become monks, and Venerable Anuruddha said, no, I've got a comfortable life. I'm going to stay here and be a householder. And then his companion was like, I'm going to leave the home life and become a bhikkhu. So here, now that you want to stay in the household, I'm going to pass on the work to you. And he's like, well, what work is there? I don't have to do any work. I lead an easy life. And then he says, do you know where rice comes from, Anuruddha? Do you know where rice comes from? And he says, yes, it comes from the plate. And he says, no, your relatives have to till the fields and plant the rice. And he goes through the whole thing of planting rice. And he says, and then sometimes the crops go bad, and sometimes different unfortunate things happen. But then even if you do get a good harvest, then you just need to plant the next year and the next and the next and the next. And then Anuruddha says, well, when is the work ever finished? And then he says, your father died and his work still wasn't finished. Your grandfather died, his work still wasn't finished. And your great-grandfather died, and his work still wasn't finished. The work is never finished. And then he says, here, you stay and look after this. I'm going to go become a bhikkhu. I'm going to leave the home life. So Anuruddha, when it dawns on him that the work is never finished, then he decides to go forth. But it's really, it really is like that even when we do go forth. It is like that in the monastery. And we do need to cultivate a certain attitude around the work and the duties in order to bring it in to be in line with Dhamma. So this teaching comes up with Luangpur Buddhadasa, and he was building an Uposatha hall one time, and he would personally oversee the work, and somebody asked him, when is it going to be finished? And he said, each day it's finished. Each day it's finished. He said, well, there's so much to do. There's so much still to build. There's so much still to do here. He said, no, each day I put it down. Each day I put it down at the end of the day, and it's finished. Next day we can just pick it up again. So really trying to cultivate that attitude that in the moment it's finished, because otherwise we'll never be peaceful. Otherwise we'll never be able to settle. Otherwise we'll never be able to bring the mind to be in line with the Dhamma. If our mind is just, okay, well, I just have to get this done. I just have to get this done. And then I can meditate. I just have to get this and this and this done, and then I can practice. But that's never going to end. Or it's like Ajahn Chah received that teaching from Luangpur Kinari, his teacher. So Ajahn Chah had to sew a new robe. He had to sew a new robe, and then basically Luangpur Kinari saw him sewing the robe under a tree, and the shade had moved, and then he was just, Ajahn Chah was just sweating out in the sun sewing this robe. and not noticing that the external environment had changed. And he said, what are you doing? Oh, I'm sewing a robe. Why are you doing that? Why are you working on it so hard and continuously? Well, so when I finish it, I can meditate. And then he said, what are you going to do after you meditate? Well, then I'll go do walking meditation. Well, what are you going to do after that? He said, I have to bring this into the practice. The sewing the robe is the practice. Being in the moment is the practice. So any of the duties we do, there's always going to be projects. There's always going to be things that are in the middle of being fixed. There's always going to be a list of things to be done. There's always going to be the to-do list, the task list. So really trying to cultivate that idea that it's finished in the moment. It's finished in the moment, or at the very least at the end of each day, it's finished. And we don't know if we're going to wake up the next morning, and we don't want to have a mind weighed down or burdened with all these things. And it just becomes too unbearable, too stressful. The weight becomes too unbearable if we don't have that attitude of being finished in every moment. So also I wanted to come in this morning because I'll take the 6-night sataha from the community, and I'll be gone at 3 Jewels today, and there's a committee meeting there, and then I'll continue on to the Humboldt Vihara to do some service at that place, and also do the final half of my retreat there. I'll be back on the September 1st, so leave that for reflection this morning.